It's time once again to talk about the 2023 NFL Draft with Dave Syvertsen, OurLads.com, Senior Scout Analyst. Dave, good to have you back again.
Thanks, Greg, for having me. Looking forward to this talk. Wide receiver talk is always very, very in-depth and interesting to talk about. So ready to get it going.
We only have like a half hour, and we just don't have enough time. I mean, there's just like the running backs, but there's just tons. What's the dog's name?
Rogue.
Rogue.
Yeah, yellow lab. You can see his tail in the back.
Yellow lab.
He knows dinner time's coming up.
Oh, he's like, come on, man.
Yeah.
So when you were saying when you had to be off the air by, that's the reason.
Well, that's reason number one.
The
other one is I have to go pick up my human being son.
Oh, okay. He might be a little bit more important. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had the same thing with my cat. I had to just put my cat on the basket. You've got the dog. It's live. Yep. I guess you could call it TV, so it's fun. All right. As we said in the running back report, and this more so 40 times, just forget it. I mean, for wide receivers, it's almost everything now in the NFL. It shouldn't be. Because we can see how many elite receivers, including, as you mentioned before, Cooper Kupp, that don't have to run 4.4, and they can still be really top-notch, elite players to the next level. But let's, until then, all we have is we've got the tape, college tape, and let's go to it. Let's take a look at your rankings. And as I tell you what, the one name I want to talk about first, and I'm trying to see where he is on the list here. He's at the bottom of your rankings, and I'm actually maybe surprised he's still in your top 10.
Okay.
And that's Butte from LSU. Now, he still has a chance to, I don't know if it's wake up or I don't know if there's been some, I think there might have been an injury issue here or there. There's been some personal things. So I'm not really clear what's been going on with him this year. Maybe we just don't know that there's something going on that we won't find out until the end of the season. But this was a guy a lot of people thought was going to be the top receiver in college football this year.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know anyone that didn't have him at least in the top 3 prior to the season. And, so I don't know. I can't speak for other people. And maybe I'm biased towards just some of the previous talent that's come out of that program. You could say this about Ohio State and LSU. Like, oh, this is the next kid up. But he had a solid year last year. He was very good. And I think one of the things I wrote down on some of these top guys, I always write, all right, what do I want to see out of them? And his was, I want to see him win more of these 50-50 situations, be more competitive with the football in the air. And he's done the exact opposite.
Yeah.
I mean, his stock has taken a complete nosedive, and maybe I'm holding on to him in my top 10 because I'm stubborn. That could be it. But, I'll tell you what, if I didn't watch him play football prior to the season, I don't think he's in the top 30.
I hear you.
Maybe that's a reason why I should bump him down. It's the drops that kill you. The rate has just skyrocketed through the roof. And, his yards after catch went down.
Isn't that's concentration? But that's my point is I think there's something going on up here that it's probably not football related.
Yes, he did miss a season. Miss a game this year. He had a baby. I want to say after the second or third game this season. Does that cause or does that give a credible reason to see someone's stock or a level of play drop that much? I don't know. I mean, if anything, it could show a team that, hey, once adversity hits, this kid kind of goes off the wayside and maybe you cross him off your board. I mean, I'm even thinking that he might go back to school next year because he just can't. He can't come into the NFL as a slot only and have the drop percentage that he does and show the lack of competitive fire. I mean, that's one of the most competitive positions, one of the most try-hard positions in football. And if he can't show that he can play with more effort and more consistency, he might not like to see what he's going to be given draft grade-wise from the advisory board.
Yeah, he there's no question that he needs a lot more polish to his game in order for him to be considered a first-round talent. Now, hey, maybe he comes out, he goes into the the prodding and the poking and the All-Star games and so forth, and he lights it up, and they're like, okay, we got you. We hear what you had to go through last year.
Right.
All it takes is one GM.
you can see him get off the ball. He's got juice, and he can get open. I mean, he's a great mix of just explosive, quick, and just he's a pretty refined route runner as well. It's the drops and it's the inconsistent effort that we see. But when you're talking sheer tools, he's got it, and he's not a small kid either. I think he's pushing 200 pounds already, and I like that out of kids that you're going to be putting as a slot only.
All right, now let's talk. Let's stay in the SEC. And we have to talk about the two receivers at Tennessee, because everybody in the beginning of the season, and rightly so, wanted to talk about Cedric Tillman. And Tillman had his moments early, injured, he's back. Let's start there. So we've, just like you said at LSU, we've seen a lot of good receivers come out of this program. So recently, how do you compare Tillman to some of the good ones?
Well, he's got the size. There's a lot of receivers at the top of this class that's like the one thing I wish they had more of. And if you're a team that's coming into the draft and you're saying, all right, we need to get someone with a little bit more competitive ability in traffic on this 50-50 balls, Tillman's got that. He's got the size. He's got the speed. I think he grades out either just as well as Joshua Palmer did out of Tennessee a couple years ago.
Okay.
And I think that has that similar play style, that he might not be the most athletically gifted mover in the class, but he's tough, he's big, and he catches the ball. And those are traits that, especially coming from the SEC and with the success that Tennessee's having right now, and hopefully he can be a part of their next level success, because he hasn't been on the field a ton this year so far. I think that he's got some of the most reliable hands in the class when you're talking about guys that are above 6'2" and 210 pounds. So I think he's got that going for him. I don't think he's going to break through, and because I'm not sure he's going to have a blow up 40 time or have a great workout. The injury is going to be a little bit of an issue. I always get nervous with receivers that have injuries to their ankles and feet, and that the procedure that he has done to his ankle, high success rate coming back from in the past with other receivers, but it's just something to kind of put on the radar if you have to kind of break a tie between him and another guy.
So you're looking at a guy that his ceiling is really a number 2.
Yes, his ceiling is number 2. I don't see him being a number 1, even if he reaches his peak.
All right. Now, Hyatt really just more came out of nowhere because Tillman was there, and you had Velus Jones last year.
Yes.
So, and this happens every year in college football.
It does.
A couple of guys that you just never even heard of at every position, and wow, what happened? And here you go. You got this kid Hyatt. So, and I do have to ask you too, is that as you're either during or after your analysis, did the tape against Georgia concern you for both of them or either of them, because Georgia was very physical at the line of scrimmage and guys were just not getting open as easily as they were the rest of the season?
Yeah, that go route that Tillman had against Ringo, where Ringo made that interception in the end zone, like that was a ball that you wish that he got to, and he didn't, and that's kind of that next level speed that he just doesn't have. And I think that's one thing that's going to prevent him from that high grade that I talked about. Hyatt, he's a bona fide sub 4.4 guy. He's got the juice to be there. He's another one that's primarily lining up in the slot. So I would love to see him get more looks against press coverage. That might be more of the pre-draft process for him, because I don't think Tennessee is going to all of a sudden start lining him up outside, but he's not your traditional slot that's shifty, 3rd and 6th weapon. He's a vertical threat. But like you said, he's so raw. He had 62 targets combined coming into this season. So the one thing I do like about his game, though, he's got 1 drop and 51 catches. And again, you need a bigger sample size to really be able for someone's hands good or not good. But I do think that the tape against Georgia, like Hooker, and we talked about this last week, it was a negative. Now, how are they going to bounce back? We'll see.
And hopefully we get to see them matched up again.
I think we will. I hope we do, to be honest with you, for the sake of the draft process, but also just the love of the game and then to watch those two go at it one more time. I would like to see a neutral field too and better weather, but here I am making excuses for Tennessee. But I think Hyatt has some superstar potential in him. But again, it's going to be a little bit of a gamble, a little bit of a risk, just because you don't have a ton of sample size off of him. But, big time speed. I mean, he roasted the Alabama secondary. So, again, we can bring up Georgia game if we want, but it's got to be in the same sentence as the Alabama tape.
Okay, so and you've got him ranked higher than Tillman. So does he have number one potential?
That's a good question. I only think there's only one true number one receiver potential guy in this class. I think Hyatt and Smith and Jigba and Addison, I think they're great number twos or complements. But if you're asking me, can they be a guy that leads their team in receiving? Yes, the answer is yes. And Hyatt is he's not going to be a big volume guy. I think he's going to be a big play guy. He's going to be someone that comes into the league and averages, 17 plus yards per catch. Kind of like what Will Fuller, what many thought he could be.
Okay.
Before the injuries popped up, I think so. Was he ever a true number one? No, but I think
good compliment though. Yes,
he was a huge compliment to the Hopkins-Watson combo.
Okay. All right. Now let's talk about some name receivers that definitely you are familiar with if you're a college football fan. Let's start with Jordan Addison, the Biletnikoff winner, who decided to head from Pittsburgh. Why would you think of going from Pittsburgh to Southern California? Not sure I understand that, but hey, everybody's different.
From Keaton Slovis to Caleb Williams.
Yeah, right. But look, fact is, it just hasn't been the same year. Now he's had injury issues, which is the reason. So that has to be a little bit concerning. But we got to look at what happened last year. Really, that's the Jordan Addison, and his tape was so good that it couldn't have gotten much better, and it didn't. So Addison's not your top ranked guy, but how good could he be?
He could be, if there's one guy that you said, all right, who could be your number one? Who could be the number one other than the guy that I already have at the top? I think Addison could be the guy that is number one, just based on the fact that he can line up everywhere. He gets off the line very well. He could be a lethal slot receiver, but he's also someone that can line up on the outside and beat press coverage. And he's just such an elusive guy when he's running routes. Getting in and out of breaks is his specialty. And quarterbacks love guys that can run themselves open. And no matter who he's matched up against, maybe other than Sauce Gardner, all right, he'll get open and he'll catch the ball when it's thrown. His drop rate has improved all 3 years of his career. My concern with him is kind of what we've seen so far this year with the injury. It's the size, and it's not the height. His height and reach is fine. It won't be great, but it's fine. I think he's weighing in at 175 pounds right now, and just go up and down the league right now with a lot of receivers that are in that weight range. Will he put some weight on? I'm sure, but that's usually an issue at that size. And I would love to see him bulk up a little bit and be able to handle some more
and maintain the speed.
I'm going to get my dog in my room. Sorry.
That's okay. So Jordan Addison, best receiver in college football last year as far as college football is concerned. This year, could it be the player that is at the top of your list, Quentin Johnson? Hey, you've got an undefeated football team. And we talked on the running back show about two of the best running backs are going to go head-to-head on Saturday night. Let's not forget, and Duggan, of course, is having a fantastic season. Not that he's pro potential, but now also don't forget about this guy, Quentin Johnson.
Yeah, and I'm taking a little bit of a swing for the fence on this one, because he's still a little raw, a little rough around the edges. But when you're talking about physical gifts and ceiling and potential impact on a game, this kid has it all. He's 6'4", 212, and he doesn't play, but he runs like DK Metcalf in terms of like those high knees, power strides. He will run by anyone that's kind of lining up, that kind of, if he can get off the line clean, you're not going to catch up to him if he gets by you. And I think that kind of combination with his elite leaping ability, it's a scary thing for a cornerback to be matched up on an island against. And the trait that nobody ever talks about with him, that it's one of the first things that I see when I watch his tape, it's the yard after catch. He breaks tackles. He's a fighter. He's a 215-pound kid that he plays like he's 230. And when you're matched up against defensive backs, corners, and safeties that are almost always going to be smaller than him, he's going to break free after that catch. And if you get him into the open field, you'll see big things happen. I mean, we saw a 2-game flash this year of what I think this is what gets me excited. It's the 22. It was against Kansas and Oklahoma State back-to-back. 22 catches, 386 yards, 2 touchdowns. And, I mean, that's the kind of tape that you see out of him. It's like, all right, this could not only be a number one, he could be a dominant force at the next level.
I'm
hoping he plays against Texas. He's fighting an ankle injury.
I hope so. He better play.
But, yeah, the drop rate is the one asterisk. That's why I'm calling it a swing for the fence. He's got to catch the ball a little bit better. I think it's above 12%. For those that need to know, a drop rate is average in the NFL between 6 and 7%. He's double that number right now for this season. So it wasn't an issue last year. It's all of a sudden an issue this year. So it's just something to keep an eye on as the season progresses.
Well, every prospect needs something to clean up.
Yeah. And I think someone's going to take it. The league loves tools, and this kid might run a sub 4.4, jump 44 inches, and broad jump 10.5, 11 feet. So, I mean, I think that he's going to be dripping with tools in a bigger way than any of the receivers that I have in my top 5.
Well, he had a 22.1 per catch average as a true freshman, which was the highest average by a true freshman in Big 12 history. So
wow, that's saying something.
Immediately popped up. But look, nobody was paying attention to TCU.
Right.
And that's why, again, we keep saying it, great opportunity for the player to hopefully get out there and play on Saturday night and to show everybody just how good he could be. But I love the way that you broke this particular player down as a top number one guy because of the fact that he does have, like you said, the toolsy kind of metrics that you're looking for in a wide receiver. So to me, he's the guy that if he runs really well, like definitely 4.4 area or better, he has to be in the top 15
for sure. I mean, I would say that's the basement. If he's going to run a 4.4 or under, jump 42 inches, broad jump 11 with this kind of size, this kind of tape, I think top 10 is a real possibility here.
All right. So again, let's hope we see him on Saturday night. Now let's talk about Ohio State because, and speaking of injuries, Smith and Jibba from Ohio State came on last year like, wow, who the heck's this guy? Because you had the two big-time pros now, Wilson and Olave, and yet this guy was like the top receiver for Ohio State last year in a lot of different ways. Did not get the opportunity yet this year to showcase, though, him being the clear number one because of injury. But there's still big games, a lot of games left for him to showcase himself. What really separates him from being potentially the top receiver in the class?
What separates him from being the top? I think the fact that he's just been primarily a slot receiver. You haven't seen him line up on the outside. Now that could be a result that you had Wilson and Olave last year kind of blocking that path. And he did move to the outside a little bit once those guys kind of bowed out for the season. I believe they skipped the Rose Bowl last year, right? And that's where he blew up.
Come on.
Yeah, I know. You like I said, you never want to use one game as the deciding factor, but that really is what put him on the on the national spotlight. He had a great year before that, but when you're drafting someone high in the first round, you need to. It's hard to imagine a slot only being drafted that high, and I think one of the reasons why you don't view him as an outside guy is he's out of Blazer. He's not going to be a 4.4 guy. He might be closer to 4.5. And like we said at the start of the talk that we did on the running backs, it matters. Those numbers are going to matter. And then, the fact that he's not very tall, the fact that he's not going to be, top 10, 20 percentile of speed, it's going to kind of just put a little dent in the armor and say, hey, are we really going to use a first-round pick on this guy? Even though his production's off the charts, he comes from a great Ohio State program that Brian Hartline has done an outstanding job with receivers, and the best one is yet to come, and Marvin Harrison Jr., which will be out next year.
And by the way, he could actually end up as a head coach next year, Hartline.
I agree with you. I've listened to him several times. He's one of these assistant coaches that I feel like I learned something about the position and scouting every time I listen to him. And there's a lot to that. There's a lot of charisma behind Hartline as well, and just the history that he has. But I think Jackson, he has everything that you would want a really good slot to be. He's thick, he's strong, he's quick, he runs good routes, he catches the ball, he can do things after the catch. I just think that the fact that there is a ceiling on him, even though the basement seems to be very high, is limited, the ceiling. And I think that's why you don't see him as a true number one guy in this class.
All right. Now let's talk about a few players that were not on your list. Actually, we'll talk about one that was and one that wasn't, because you have in your honorable mention Ronnie Bell from Michigan. And we know going into last season, the first game of the season, I mean, it looked like after a couple of plays, he was going to be in the Heisman discussion. And then he gets hurt, returning a punt, and out for the year. So it took him a while to get going this year, which is not surprising. And now all of a sudden we're starting to see that he's getting his legs under him again, and he's going to be the old Ronnie Bell. But I bring him up because there's also somebody that was not on your list yet, maybe, and that's Roman Wilson, his teammate, because while Bell was trying to get his feet under him, I don't know, of course, their number one receiver is also there. And you've got Wilson, who's not the biggest guy, but to me, it looks like, he's got good speed. He seems to be a really good runner inside and out of his breaks. He could probably return kicks at the next level. I just think that he's one. I don't think I don't know whether or not he could be a first round pick like a Dotson, because maybe that's a guy that might be similar based on his height and his game breaking ability. But I just wonder, if he had attention a little bit more, because Michigan is such a running team, I wonder if his stats would be through the roof.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. I mean, I'm looking at his numbers right now. He's got 51 career catches, and it's not a knock against Roman Wilson as a prospect. I think, you can't obsess too much about stats when you're going over, but you want to see the reason I bring that up is it's a lot of unknown with Roman Wilson, right? And I'm not even sure he'll declare, because there's just a lot of action in that Michigan offense right now that, he's just not getting a piece of. Now, when he does get a piece of it, he shows elite quickness, like you said, elite suddenness. He's got the explosive ability. He, like we talked about with the running backs, he's an explosive play guy. He's someone that you get that will strike fear into the opponent when he touches the ball. But also another guy that's kind of a slot only right now. I don't think he's lining up out wide at all. But again, that could be the situation that he's in. I think that we're going to be talking about him at this time next year. I'm not sold on the fact that he's going to come out, and that was good news for you. But I would love to see him as the true bona fide feature guy in a passing game. And I think he has the upside of a Garrett Wilson type, where if you can put him up on the outside and inside and show that he can do things after the catch, he doesn't drop the ball, which I love. And, I think that's the reason why he's not on my list right now. But if he ends up coming out, I would probably put him in the top 10.
Now, and what about Cornelius Johnson? Because Cornelius Johnson ended up being the number one receiver for Michigan last year. And I got to tell you, he was probably the quietest number one receiver for a undefeated regular season Michigan team that I ever remember. I mean, he just did not stick out. It wasn't a playmaker. He just look. Somebody had to catch the ball without Ronnie Bell, and they were a little bit younger last year than they are this year. And he was the guy. He was the beneficiary. He seems to be a good player, a steady player. I don't see playmaker. I don't see specialness. I just see somebody that, maybe he's not going to end up in your rankings, but I could see him being a very steady pro.
He'll be on a roster next year for sure. He'll get drafted for sure. He's a height, weight, speed guy. The triangle numbers are all there. 6'3", 208. He'll probably run in the 4.4s. I know that pro scouts prior to this season, when they come out with their scouting list prior to the year, he was pretty far up there. And again, that's really based on tools. Yes, like you said, there's nothing that stands out on his tape. If anything, I think the one standout is a negative is too many drops in relation to how many times he catches the ball.
True.
but he's also put in a lot of tough contested situations. But he's got the tools, and I think that tools with just a little bit of production from a big program like this, no doubt he gets drafted. And if he can, I think he'll find his way into the league as a number 4, number 5, and then where he progresses from there will come down to the development of his skill set, the ball skills and the route running, because everything else that he needs to be a productive receiver, it's there. So you have to start asking the question, why are we not seeing more of it? With the Michigan offense, it's run heavy. They have to spread the ball out. I mean, all 3 of these Michigan receivers, and even the tight ends, who I like, they just don't get a lot of looks, and that's why it's a little bit of a guessing game with them. And I think the workouts and the private team meetings that they have leading up to the draft process will be a big deal for them.
A couple more minutes, and I want to talk about a couple more of these. Not on your list. Dante Demus from Maryland, and they're just stacked as a wide receiver position. It's just incredible that Maryland has like 3 guys with really good pro potential. But Demus was supposed to be, oh, watch out, man, this guy's going to be really good. Then he had the ACL injury last year, and he's kind of fallen a little bit behind. Jarrett's also kind of taken up maybe the mantle there. And like I said, it's a stacked room. But where's Demus now? Is it kind of, that injury has kind of put him behind a little bit, and how does that hurt him at the next level as for the draft?
Yeah, I mean, the things I have on him from game notes this year, it looks like he doesn't look like a crisp route runner. He doesn't look like it's an easy, like, plant and go type motion.
So maybe he's not feeling comfortable.
He was still wearing, I agree. He was still wearing a pretty thick knee brace. I want to even say a month ago. And you normally don't see that when receivers come back. Like, they don't like those things on their legs. You got to think there's probably some sort of pain or instability still in the knee that I don't think he's at full strength yet. So I do remember having him really high up on my stack last year prior to the injury. He was leading the Big Ten in receiving at that point when he got hurt. And I had him as a top 10 player in the class last year.
It's like him and Butte. They could have been the first 2 receivers that we would be taking a look at. All of a sudden, both of them, for a variety of reasons, have kind of slipped down the pack.
Yeah, he had a couple bad drops against SMU. Just looking at my game notes from them, it seemed like the 2 things that were bothering me were the drops, and also it just didn't look like he had the explosive trait in his game that he had last year that you do see with Raheem Jarrett. I mean, that dude is explosive. I mean, he still has a ways to go with the receiving skill set as well. But when you watch those guys run next to each other, it looks like a tight end and a receiver in contrast.
So if you looked at Demus before the injury, and you've seen Jarrett this year, and you also have Copeland.
Yeah, Copeland, yep.
Who do you think has the...
I mean, if you're telling me I have to pick one of them right now, it's going to be Jarrett. Just because of the explosive traits. They hand him the ball. He plays like he's a strong, tough dude, too. Like, I actually love the way he plays. I think he's got some Jalen Reagor in him in that he looks the part. He's yoked. He's fast, but he's not completely there mentally yet. I think he still has a little bit of margin to make up, but I think if the draft were tonight, I think he goes in front of Demus.
And he was a 5-star recruit, I believe, too, Jarrett.
Yeah.
So this doesn't come out of nowhere.
That number 1 jersey.
Yep. And also Tank Dell from Houston, small guy.
Yeah.
So how does he fit in? Because other guys that are his size, if he gives you everything you're looking for in a player that size, how does he fit in at the draft?
Day 3 for sure. With his toughness and ability to play a little bit bigger than that size, you could see him win a lot of 50-50 balls. I think you're looking at like a round 6, round 7 area. But a team's going to have to look at him and say, hey, he's partially being drafted for the receiving skill set, but just as much as a returner. The returners, I feel like the value of those guys has gone down a little bit just because it's not as big as it used to be, especially with the kick returns. But, he's a tough kid. He catches the ball. He runs great routes. And he runs for a college offense, for that offense, he runs a pretty good route tree. A lot of the kids that come out of that kind of air raid type offense, they have a lot of work to do with their route running. I think he's pretty far developed, so I think that's going to help his cause a little bit, kind of boost him into like that round 6, round 5. If he does go sub 4.4, sub 4.5, 4.35 area, I think he could bump him up. I don't see day 2 there.
No,
the size is too much of an issue. 165
pounds.
Well,
who was the other kid that was that small? The one from Louisville. That went to the Rams. He just started playing because I know he was injured.
No, I know.
Which is not a surprise. When you're that small, you're going to get hurt in the NFL.
Yeah. There's a few guys every year that come out. They're that size, and they very rarely work out. It's a big man's game, even though the speed and the explosion. Yeah, Tutu Atwell. Yeah, that was one of the surprises of the draft. Not that the Rams haven't, not that they pick anymore. They just trade all their picks for veteran players, but that was a questionable pick.
Oh yeah, it sure was, and it hasn't worked out so far.
It was based on speed only, and yes, I know the game favors speed and space, and you can't touch the receivers downfield, but there's more to the game and playing receiver than running a fast in a straight line. I want to take the guys that can do that, but also have the suddenness to change direction, and they got to catch the ball. And I think Dell's got better ball skills than Atwell did, and he's got a little bit more toughness to him. He's got a little bit more dog in him. You see, you can just see the way he blocks. Like, he's a football player. He's not a track athlete that has a football uniform on, and I think that's going to go his way.
And then lastly, Jacob Cowing, because he goes from UTEP to Arizona. He's having a really good season. He's a little bit bigger, so he's got that advantage. So same thing though. He's not very big.
He's a very smooth player. That's the one word that just keeps jumping off the sheet to me. The drop rate is over 12%. That's a high number. That's also going to come down. But when you see him run routes, he's elusive. He's bendy. His lower body, he's got great mobility in his hips, knees, and ankles, and that helps him make these sharp cuts in and out of the breaks. And I think he probably will be a slot only because of the size. And again, you need to see him get off press coverage. I haven't seen him have to do that a lot in the offenses that he's played in, but I do think he's a reliable route runner that kind of, those slot guys that really kind of know how to find the windows in zone coverage, and then they're also quick enough to beat man coverage. That's who I think he'll be. I think he's another late day 3 pick, but I am very confident that he'll get drafted.
Dave, we are going to be talking about receivers galore and running backs galore and prospects galore for the next several months. Thanks for the time that you had today in our window, because we just can go on and on and on.
Yes, we could.
But we've got time. That's why we wanted to get this started as early as we did, because we have got a lot of time to try to talk about a lot of these players. So check out ourlads.com. You can check out the draft section there. We have the links very easily in the description area of the videos that we have here with Dave, so that you can go right from here to the Ourlads, to that page that has all of Dave's reports for everything that we're talking about and more, including his first top 96 rankings that are available for all the players in the NFL draft for 2023. And next week, we're going to cover tight ends and the offensive line. So, Dave, appreciate it.
Thank you, Greg.
You got it.
Talk to you next week.
Talk to you next week.